On April 17, 1955, Albert Einstein was hospitalized due to chest pain. At that moment, he was unaware that the largest artery in his body, the aorta, had ballooned and ruptured in his abdomen, causing internal bleeding known as an abdominal aortic aneurysm. At that time, he was preparing a speech for television to celebrate Israel's 7th anniversary. His doctors wanted to operate immediately, but having undergone surgery for the same issue 8 years earlier, Einstein seemed to understand that his time had come. He refused with the immortal words, "Whenever I want, I will die. There is no joy in artificially prolonging life. I have done my part. Now it is time to go. I will go gracefully." Indeed, the following day, he passed away early at Princeton Hospital. Those familiar with the hospital might recognize its name. In fact, the hospital shown in the series has no real connection to his death, but the writers likely chose the name intentionally. The most remarkable event, however, occurred during Einstein's autopsy. Pathologist Thomas Harvey, just 7 hours after Einstein's death, removed his brain without his family's permission and preserved it with a 10% formalin solution. Harvey's aim was to study what he believed was a unique brain to discover the source of Einstein's extraordinary intelligence. However, Einstein had hated being idolized and had wished for his body to be cremated and his ashes scattered secretly, so Harvey ignored these wishes. Not only did he take the brain, but he also removed Einstein's eyes and gave them to his ophthalmologist, Henry Abrams. When Einstein's son, Hans, learned of this, he persuaded Harvey to obtain retroactive permission to study the brain scientifically. The condition was that it would be examined only for research purposes and that the results would be published in reputable academic journals. Harvey promised to publish within a year. Since then, Einstein's brain has been the subject of numerous studies. Researchers have tried to discover whether the traces of this incredible genius could be found in his brain. A common myth claims that despite his genius, Einstein performed poorly in school. It's easy to see why people wanted to believe this, as it is comforting to think that someone who struggled in school could become a genius like Einstein. The purpose of this video is partly that. If you understand what made Einstein great, you too could potentially achieve the same, or even surpass him. To succeed, you must first stop deceiving yourself. Of course, grades alone are not the sole determinant of the future, but this does not change the fact that Einstein's grades were very good. Evidence includes his high school report card from September 30th, 1896. At that time in Switzerland, the highest grade was 6 and the lowest was 1. Careful examination of his report card shows that he received 6s in algebra, geometry, physics, and history, 5s in chemistry, natural history, and German language and literature, and 4s in drawing and geography. His lowest grade, a 3, was in French, which was still respectable. Einstein was not only successful in high school, his mother also wrote letters confirming his accomplishments. Of course, he had occasional conflicts with teachers. For instance, a middle school teacher at the time complained that Einstein should not have been his student, not because he was lazy, but because he often smiled at what was being taught, which the teacher interpreted as disrespect. However, such anecdotes cannot be used to judge his entire school performance. Considering all records, Einstein was never an unsuccessful student. Another reason people might believe in the myth of poor grades is the difference between German and Swiss grading systems. Born on March 14, 1879, in the German Empire, Einstein had attended school under the German system, in which 1 was the highest grade and 6 the lowest. People later confused this with the Swiss system. In his final year of school in Switzerland, the grading system switched to using 6 as the highest grade and 1 as the lowest, which caused further confusion. Records and letters from his family confirm that his grades were always good or excellent. So what caused his exceptional intellect, and could it be found in his brain? This question has fascinated scientists for decades. Did geniuses like Einstein have specific brain traits, or did their brains develop certain regions through intense focus on a subject? Although pathologist Harvey had no neuroscience expertise, his hasty decision to remove and preserve Einstein's brain provided some clues. Harvey photographed the brain and, together with his mentor, cut it into 240, roughly 10 cubic centimeter pieces, which were then prepared as microscope slides. The sections corresponded roughly to functional brain regions. However, Harvey and his mentor were both pathologists and lacked the expertise to interpret the extraordinary brain in front of them. They could identify pathological conditions like trauma or bleeding, but were unprepared for the mysteries of genius. Harvey failed to publish findings within the promised year, Because he did not know what to examine, his actions caused ethical controversy, leading to his resignation, and he later moved the brain across America, where it became a source of fascination and frustration for decades. Eventually, the brain returned to researchers who could study it more systematically. The first research on Einstein's brain was published 44 years after his death, and later studies revealed intriguing findings. Einstein's brain was smaller than average. An adult male of his age and weight would typically have a brain of about 1,400 grams, while Einstein's weighed 1,230 grams. As we know from studies of animal intelligence, bigger does not necessarily mean better. A smaller brain can be densely packed with neurons and have higher processing capacity. Several unique features were found in Einstein's brain. In the frontal cortex, particularly the right frontal lobe, there were additional folds associated with non-verbal mathematical abilities. A distinctive omega-shaped fold in the motor cortex, responsible for precise hand movements, was also present. Studies have shown that children who begin playing the violin between ages 6 and 14 often develop this fold, which matches Einstein's own musical education. He began learning the violin at age 6 and continued playing throughout his life. Other findings include a lower number of neurons in Brodmann area 39 in the left hemisphere, associated with language comprehension. This corresponds to Einstein's delayed speech development, difficulties similar to dyslexia. Einstein did not learn to speak fluently until around age 6 and struggled with reading and writing for a while. Differences in the motor and sensory regions of his brain correspond to his visual and musical thinking. He often thought in colors and music rather than words. He would sometimes play the violin for hours while thinking about a problem, then suddenly find a solution and translate it into mathematics. His perception of the universe was also guided by aesthetics rather than purely mathematics. He asked, "If I were God, would the universe be created this way?" and judged theories based on their elegance, which influenced the development of special and general relativity. Other studies revealed that the left inferior parietal lobule, responsible for mathematical and symbolic thinking, was about 15% larger than average. The hippocampus and neocortex areas related to memory and higher cognition were relatively large, and the corpus callosum connecting the hemispheres was denser than normal, suggesting highly efficient communication between hemispheres. These anatomical differences partially explain Einstein's extraordinary abilities. The question remains whether these features were innate or developed through years of study. Neuroscience shows that the brain is highly plastic. Neural connections strengthen as we learn and engage deeply with information. However, large-scale structural differences in the brain, such as those seen in Einstein, likely formed early in life. Einstein's innate traits, combined with his perseverance, curiosity, and dedication, allowed him to transform potential into achievement. His childhood challenges may have forced him to think and learn in novel ways, and his relentless pursuit of knowledge allowed him to fully realize his abilities. Genius is rarely the result of genes, anatomy, effort, or environment alone, but rather a combination of all these factors. One may not be born with Einstein's brain or achieve the same grades. Anyone can reshape their brain through focus, persistence, and deep engagement. Neuroplasticity and taking control of one's learning are powerful tools that are often underused. Next time you learn something new or deeply consider a topic, imagine not only gaining knowledge, but also physically reshaping the connections in your brain. Enjoy the process, and you may discover new potential within yourself.